Hello, Christina Giordano here, the founder of Sold, your go-to resource for soulful entrepreneurship. And my philosophy is this: people can no longer be sold to, then they must be sold to. That is SOUL''D. However, in order to sell with soul, you need to be sold on you first. Today's episode is called The Stability Required to Hold What You've Called In. Now, just as a reminder, these are just previews of the full episodes that are available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So if any of this is singing to you, you know where to find the full episode. Again, it's Sold by Christina Giordano, and you can find it on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Now, today is brought to you by yet another edge of mine that I have reached. And this is pretty common within all of my content. I like to share how I'm living the Sold methodology through edges, through personal transformation, through my own trajectory as an entrepreneur, and so many other things. And today came up because for me, I have been making a lot of realizations around my own patterns of inconsistency, of instability, and of what I like to call spikes. Now, I've talked about spikes in previous work in previous content, and it's essentially volatility. It's the moments that trigger us. It's the things that kind of like stop us. It's what makes our nervous system go up and down. And these spikes are essentially patterns that pull me out of integrity. So anything that reflects instability is essentially pulling you out of integrity. And these are patterns that remove my focus and attention from what matters to me, what I believe to be steady for me, whether it's my lifestyle, whether it's what I'm doing, whether it's my work. They pull me out of integrity and then preoccupy me with distraction or mindless consumption or even exposure to a constant feedback loop that I've been trying to move away from. And this is common with everybody. We all have these ways of deviating from steadiness, of being fully contained. And so the reason why I know that these realizations were right for me is because they didn't require me to have more willpower or force myself or restrict anything. It essentially moves me away from the idea of discipline, because for so long I've believed discipline to be override, because that's how I would respond to it. However, it's not. And in realizing that I could have structure with accountability, with discipline that is truly aligned, and with scaffolding in place that holds me up versus me holding up anything, that's when I realized that it's right for me because of this clarity. Discipline feels heavy, clarity feels steady. And the more steady I can be, the more internally stable I can be on the inside, the more stability will land for me. Now, if this is something that you're moving through as well, because I know that we are going through a lot of collective shifts, and many people are experiencing and becoming aware of their own patterns of inconsistency, of conditioning, of programming, of misaligned behaviors and actions that keep them away from moving towards their goals and in the trajectory that they want. If this is singing to you, this episode is really focused on the value of stability, what it actually represents, but also what it actually gives you. And I do this by talking about one of the main things that shows our capacity for stability, and that's money. So money essentially reflects your internal instability because it is the most visible feedback loop that reveals it. It shows your capacity, your self-trust, and your identity coherence. And so one of the most visible signs of instability is through one way that I actually dive into the most on this episode, and that is spontaneous or sporadic spending patterns. Now, most people think, again, that sporadic and spontaneous spending patterns come from lack of discipline. They don't. It comes from internal instability in relationship to self-trust and safety. So this is essentially the arc of the entire episode. I first talk about 4 primary roots of this. So these could be regulating internal discomfort through external movement, the fact that our nervous system loves movement versus stillness, when stillness is usually the right next step. And then a couple more of those. And then from there, I talk about 4 core principles. Let's see, are they 4? Yes, four core principles that financial advice never really addresses. How does someone truly resource themselves well? How do they become more internally stable to hold those resources? So resourcing yourself, again, has very little to do with restriction and everything to do with structural stability and internal coherence. So we map out the 4 principles of that. Part 3 is about normalizing stability, because the deepest shift that you can make when moving towards stability is making it boring, basically. You want it to be neutralized. You want it to be just something that exists, because the current manifestation experiences that we have all witnessed, they want you to feel the extravagance of more money. They want you to be in the flow and the vibe of receiving. It's very much like a vibey, emotional experience. That creates spikes. And more often than not, people experience big wins from that type of thinking and simultaneously experience big losses. So the goal here is steadiness, having a steady trajectory of expansion, so that not only that there are no spikes, but so that you're teaching yourself internal stability, so that your external factor, your external world no longer has a say of whether or not you're safe. You just know you are. And wherever stability goes, or wherever stability is, that's where resources land, where money lands, where opportunity lands, where possibility lands. So this episode, it moves into normalizing stability, and we actually go one layer deeper and get to the root of things in terms of how to trust stability, because the root of all of this really comes down to self-trust. Can we trust ourselves to maintain stability? Can we trust ourselves to grow with stability? Can we trust ourselves to have and hold more sustainably and with stability? Because if we're receiving and we're automatically reallocating or redistributing or spending, we're not necessarily accumulating anything at all. So that's essentially the arc of the episode. And at the very end, I talk about why sold is not so much about expression, which is really regarding the marketing methods, but it's more about containment, which is all about the manifesting methods. You can express without containment, but the expression won't be sustained, because expression that is consistent, that reflects internal consistency, that reflects integrity, not morality, but continuity, that reflects internal stability. This is what the field supports now. This is what we're leaning towards now. This is what the world is gravitating towards now. And so when you make yourself the center of your own universe, when you're stable within yourself, that's how you attract things. And it's simply just life showing you your own stability. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Again, it's sold by ChristinaGiordano.com. Sold is SOUL''. And until next time, be well and take care.